Did you ever get an impression during when they're telling their side of the stories that they were embellishing or hiding things? And did that make you want to go, excuse me, I know that's not true, or try and coax something out of them that they weren't giving out naturally? Was that hard not to do?
Say again?
Say, particularly with Wendy, for instance, if she had her point of view about what happened with something with Kurt, and you knew from the information you'd gathered that maybe that wasn't an accurate representation, was it hard not to say, are you sure that happened like that, Wendy? Or
It doesn't ring a bell. I mean, I tend to let people, I'm not, I think there's as much to be discerned from someone omits as to what they say.
Yeah.
And, or if they're going to see it, I mean, look, most people mythologize their lives. And whether they're doing consciously or subconsciously, it's just a fact. We can't, where were you in January 1991? Do you know? And if I specifically January 15th, what were you doing?
No idea.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I mean, I'm trying doing these interviews, I mean, when I worked with Mick Jagger and the Stones, Mick said something to me early, like, you're going to have to really, before we go to an area, show me stuff so I can bring my mind to it. And it was clear that, like, fans know more about what happened with Mick and Rolling Stones than Mick does. And that's not that's not a slight on Mick. It just means, like, he doesn't obsess over the day-to-day. And I don't know what I know I was in college in 91, but I couldn't specifically tell you what I was doing in March of 91. Yeah. And so when you ask people about these interviews, it's like, they tend to, and so if someone wants to alter the narrative, like I said, I find that, can often be as revealing as possible. But to your question, I'm trying to think if I ever pushed them. I probably did at various points. I just, I kind of try to create a space for people to tell me their stories. That's kind of my way of doing interviews, to create a sort of trust so that they can sort of give them the space. I don't like to ask a lot of questions. I like a lot of silence, really. I'm very interested in the space between the cracks.
Yeah, they reveal a lot about the incidents and the person, I guess, don't they? But when they're on edge and haven't done it before, does that nervousness kind of connect onto you at all? Or?
No. I mean, I knew Kim and Wendy quite intimately at the point when I did the interviews with them. I mean, I hadn't met Chris, but I thought we got along great. And,
What was your relationship with Kurt in terms of, obviously you were aware of him, but were you a massive fan? Did you have mutual friends, or did you know a lot about him, or just, the vague amounts we all know?
I knew probably a little less than your average fan going into it, because I wasn't a fan. I liked the music. Fan to me implies a degree of obsessive-ness, or, and I liked Nirvana. I really like their albums, but Unplugged's one of those albums that you can put on in a lot of different times of the day. Yeah. Some albums, if you're writing, if you were sitting down to write and you're going to put on a Nirvana album, Unplugged's kind of a good album to, or whatever. So I probably listened to Unplugged quite a bit in my life. The thing with Unplugged for me was my favorite album of the 80s was Me Puppets 2. And Nirvana covers 3 songs off that album at the Unplugged performance. And that was a total mind-blowing thing when that happened, because Me Puppets 2 was a kind of an obscure album. And, I mean, I don't know, maybe, I don't know how much sold, but it couldn't have sold that much. And so that was like crazy for me at the time when I saw that. So I'd always sort of been fond of that performance. But no, this was not, the family came to me, I didn't go to them. So
Do you think that's a good thing? Because otherwise it might have been an overly glossy or like optimistic view of what he was.
No, I think you got to be. I mean, you can't. It would be impossible to make a movie on a band that you didn't like their music. I mean, you have to listen to music all the time. So, I mean, I would say that when I say I wasn't a fan, it's not that I didn't like them. There were other things I was interested in. I think back then too. In the mid to late 90s, I was slightly obsessed with like 60s soul music, like Solomon Burke. But in the 80s, I was, grew up with sort of SST records and Husker Du and Zen Arcade and Meat Puppets and Minutemen and all those bands. So Kurt and I had a lot of the same musical influences. I think like where I might have, So, but I certainly by the end, like if you ask me now, I'm a huge fan.
Yeah.
I'm like a massive fan. I love, there's not a song in the catalog that I don't admire for the most part, so.
I guess you can hear the stories now when you hear the songs more than ever before and relate more emotion to them.
Yeah, but he's not a great storyteller lyrically. He's great with phrases. He's great with like little sort of like these visual little sort of haikus, if you will. But in terms of narrative, I mean, take a song like "Serve the Servants." There's 4 different stories. Each 3 lines may connect, and then the next 3 are on some other subject. So there's one thing, about Kurt that made it sort of challenging to catalog his music. By catalog, I mean decide where it goes in the movie based upon lyrical content, because oftentimes it's a bit, it can be sort of cryptic. But one of the things I think is really interesting for people who experience the film is like at the top of the film you hear Territorial Pissings. And it's the beginning of the movie, and you're just sort of, it's a great rock song. It's one of my favorite songs of theirs. And then you hear it later in the movie, and my guess is when you hear it later in the movie, the lyrics resonate in a much more personal way because you've gone through Kurt's life with him. And when you arrive at that station, when he says things like, when he talks about the legendary divorce, or, I always wanted a father and said I got a dad and all that. I mean, that's all now comes to, but that's a very rare song in how overtly autobiographical it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, when you're working alongside Frances, is it hard not to get paternal and want to look out for her when you're discussing what the film should be about and what bits should be included? Because you want to protect her in some way, but at the same time make the film that you want to make that does Kurt justice and is honest.
Well, we weren't working side by side. I met with her at the beginning of the film, and then I met with her when the film was done. I mean,
that was it.
No, I mean we talked, but not creatively about creative decisions. Okay. But protective about protecting her from certain images in the film. No, that was the whole point, that we weren't trying to spin anything.
Exactly, yeah.
That was the thing that she said to me at our first meeting. That was the dictate, is whatever it is needs to be honest and unflinching. And when I showed her the film the first time, I was certainly curious as to how she would experience, or apprehensive about how she would experience the haircutting scene, for example. She never blinked.
Really?
Yeah.
I guess it's the project she wanted it to be, so that's, job done, even if it was, hard to watch, perhaps. That's how she resolved it in her head, who knows?
Yeah.
For me, what I took away from the film was the relationship between Courtney and Kurt. It was so much warmer than I imagined. It even reminded me of, my first love, and when it's so overwhelming and you're just obsessed with each other.
Same here.
It's lovely to watch.
Well, it's like love evolves through life. So there's love at 20, and there's love at 30, and there's love at 40, and there's love at 50, and so on and so on. And it's a different type of love. And I think for a lot of people my age, I'm 46, when I was looking at that stuff, it just brought me right back to that place.
Yeah.
And, I think that that relationship was much more balanced than people thought or have concluded up to now. But the way I experienced it, and I wasn't there, of course. So, disclaimer: anything I say is just my impression based upon the materials that I had, which is a distinct advantage.
Yeah.
I was at dinner the other night, and some guy and I got into a sort of thing about Kurt, and he was telling me what Kurt, it's not somebody who knew Kurt, it's just a fan, and Kurt did this, and it's I'm like, look, man. I've had access to all the primary sources. Like, I don't mean to be a dick, but that's not true. Whatever he was saying. But what were we saying? We were talking about Courtney. It was important that the audience experience Courtney through Kurt's eyes.
Yeah.
It's a movie about Kurt, and so I structured it, and it was my hope that we can free up the sort of prism of the last 20 years and sort of see it sort of unfiltered and experience it, like I said, through Kurt's eyes. When you see it through Kurt's eyes, you could see why he loved her, why they were compatible. And I think to understand why Kurt would attempt to kill himself in Rome, you have to understand his investment in the relationship.
Yeah. Which all those scenes, those, home videos, that's what they give you, that's what they deliver. And by that point, you're invested in their relationship as well, aren't you?
Yeah.
I think, like you said, I think people watching that film will come away with a new warmth towards Courtney if it wasn't there before, and will stop listening to all the myths that have surrounded everything for years.
Yeah, that seems to be the case, I mean, I feel I don't know how any human being can walk through can endure what she's endured the last 20 years, because it's bad enough that her husband killed himself, and she has I think tremendous amount of guilt. I don't want that to be misconstrued, not for reasons that the Holocaust deniers might think, but the sort of from what she talks about Rome and whatnot, and I look at it and it's just like, man, she hasn't been able to grieve because, and it's kind of, it's quite disturbing, and, but there's like a gender bias in the media, and, she's a strong, aggressive, opinionated woman who doesn't hold back. And, she's punk, so she's defiant, or she has been for most of the past 20 years. And she's struggled with drugs, so there's also that. But she also, is, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, just in my experience, she did something for me that nobody's ever done, which is she said, here's all the stuff, go make the film go make the film you want to make. She never asked to see the film until it was finished. I mean, she saw the film 2 days before the premiere. It was like there wasn't a chance for her to give a note if she wanted to. And I felt that she was doing that out of respect for me as a filmmaker. The same way Frances was. Frances was totally respectful. Like, she's like, look, dude, I'm not a filmmaker. You're the filmmaker. Yeah. I do my own art. This is your art. Which is why Frances, when it came to promoting the film, she's like, look, I'll do an interview, but I'm not comfortable going off and like all over the world promoting this film. It's your film. Yeah. And I felt that from Courtney, that it was like, I don't know what she thought by giving me total control. I mean, maybe it was like, what's the worst that could happen? But a lot of it, she came to me because she liked my movies. So I really felt like she had a overinflated opinion of me a little bit.
Or maybe you're just being modest.
No, I'm serious. I think she had an overinflated opinion of me and gave me, like, I don't know, but I've never, I don't know why anyone would do that. I was at a Q&A last night. I looked at the audience and go, who in this room would allow me right now to give me the keys to your house, and I'm going to go rummage through. I'm going to go through all your stuff, and I'm going to make the film that I want to make about you. And I may go talk to your friends, and I may do whatever. And by the way, you have no control. Like, why would you give up that control?
Yeah, that's
Why?
horrific. That's not something I could ever allow.
What's in your house?
What is that? I'm not going to tell you. I'm not ready for that right now.